Welcome, nerds of all creeds and ages. Welcome to my first Herotaku video article. Is Yu-Gi-Oh meant for kids? Well, I have to kind of give you a yes/no answer on that. Now, before I go into details of why I say yes/no, I'm just going to say this straight up. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go way back when Yu-Gi-Oh started. When people asked this question, I would have said yes. Yu-Gi-Oh is meant for kids all the way through. The card game is meant for kids. The show is meant for kids. All the merchandising, every single thing you have to deal with Yu-Gi-Oh when it first started, back during the first couple of seasons with Yuki, Joey, and Tia, Tristan, and all of them. Yes, the show was meant for kids. But this show and the card game got more complex and got a little bit more mature as the show went on. Heck, as the show went on, it got so mature to the point they had to push the giant reset button and make it for little kids again. I mean, look at the themes and the ages of the protagonists of the show as the show develops into 5Ds. Heck, I think they even said, like, Yusei is supposed to be in his late teens. I think he's like 18 or 19 when the show goes on. But they had to hit the giant reset button, make it for kids again, and Konami officially even stated that Zeal was a giant reboot of the series to get younger kids back into it, which Japan is most famous for. The biggest example of this is Pokemon. Pokemon, after a certain point, started resetting itself every couple of seasons, so it can get fresh new people involved and grow the fan base every more. Hence why a new generation is coming out every 2 years. Hence why there's a new generation coming out later this year. But that's why they hit the giant reset button. Now, as for the card game, as they had to try to develop new ways to keep the card game fresh, things had to become more complex. The cards had to become more complex. So, ironically, no. As the card game had to try to develop itself and make itself fresh and new, with pretty much within every single booster pack. Now, I'm mostly relating to the past couple of years. Yes, I mean, yes, it has gotten more complex and more mature. But to answer the question, no. Now these days, the card game is not meant for kids. I know they advertise it's meant for kids, but I have yet to meet more than a handful of kids that actually wants to sit down and will actually learn how to play the game. Most kids I try to teach the game to, usually after the explanation of the three different cards, they usually say, nope, not interested, get up and leave. They only view the card game now as pretty much as merchandising, like action figures, posters, just merchandising for the show. They only want that Gaga Magician because the main character has a Gaga Magician. They only want a Utopia because it's one of the title monsters of the show. They only view it now as a way to get the cards that the main character uses. But do they actually want to play it these days? I have to say no. They don't usually want to play it these days. Dragon Duel, or at least from what I've seen from the reports, Dragon Duels here in the States has the lowest it's ever been since since any kind of youth Yu-Gi-Oh event has ever been. When I went to the Yu-Gi-Oh Championship in Dallas last year, there was, I only believe, like 25 kids. Keep in mind, there was almost, if I remember correctly, there was like a grand plus of people who were older than the age of 16 playing this card game. I'll look up the actual reports and put the number right here. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head right now at the moment, but I know it was more than 200. And think about that. That's more than 25 kids participating in the Dragon Duel event, when there's like 500 plus people older than 16. This card game is not meant for kids anymore. Heck, even after a certain point, Konami silently acknowledged that the majority of the player base is older than the ages of 16 to 18, older than 16 and 18. How do they do this? Well, one of the best examples is Prophecy Destroyer. This card blew people away when it was first announced. When the images first leaked out of this picture, of the picture of the card, which was on the front of a tin, so people can get a great look at it, people were instantly calling this fake. Too magic looking. It looks like they stole the artwork off of a magic card. But when Konami 3 hours later said that this was an actual card coming out of the next set, people were just blown away. There was no way Yu-Gi-Oh was going to go this dark and mature. Well, the card came out. There's 3 different rarities of it now. There's Secret, Ultra, and Ultimate. And continuously after each set, there's been at least 1 or 2 cards that featured that kind of style of artwork. The dark, more gritty, and more mature. It can be as dark as Prophecy Destroyer, or the subtle maturity artwork with the very high detail, like Noble Arms Caliber. Even though that's one of the plainest pictures of a sword and a stone that you can get, but it's the detail, it's the level of detail, the coloring, and the textures that are on that picture that make me want to look this and goes, this is more leaned towards a more mature card player than it is for kids. Of course, if you want to go the traditional route of, you want to aim it more toward kids, look at the Madolches. That's what I'm talking about. The Madolches are more leaned towards kids than some of the other cards are. And we usually do get 1 or 2 cards out of every set that featured this kind of artwork. Last set, it was Caliber. And I think one of the Noble Knights? I can't remember. The Noble Knights have been featuring really good artwork. But overall, the trading card game has grown to the point where it is leaned more. Even though yes, it has advertised for kids, but then that's mostly a fault because it is tied to the show. The show is aimed at kids, and since the kids are learning about the card game through the show, they want to at least get 1 or 2 cards from the show, so they advertise the card game as part of the show. But how many kids these days do you see, dragging their mom to the card section saying, hey, we want that booster pack, or I want that deck, or I want that special edition, or I want that tin? You don't see them these days. You might see 1 or 2 little kids run through this section, and that's it. But I rarely see kids in the card section these days for Yu-Gi-Oh! I might see them for Pokemon, some for Kaijudo, or some for a stupid odd reason for like now they got the collectible like eraser tops and baseball cards or dog tags, something that's not Yu-Gi-Oh! Something that is not really a card game that is in that section. I see them in that section for that reason. But the card game isn't meant for kids anymore. I mean, everybody's pretty much silently agreed to this. Yu-Gi-Oh! Even Konami has silently said that this game is no longer we acknowledge that an older fan base plays this card game now. So to sum it all up, no, Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game is not meant for kids anymore. But the show, I just said it in this video, the show is nothing but a giant reboot toward these little kids. But then again, you gotta get them while they're young, right?